Call the meeting to order. Everyone, please rise for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Excuse me. The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meeting of public bodies at which any business affecting their interests is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the Cedar Grove Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be advertised by having the date, time, and place thereof posted on bulletin boards in the district, published and/or transmitted to the Verona, Cedar Grove Times, and Star Ledger newspapers, filed with the township clerk, and posted on the district's website. May I have roll call, please?
Mrs. Burke?
Here.
Mrs. Dye?
Here.
Mrs. Marinelli?
Here.
Mr. Mandela?
Here.
And Mr. Sakala?
Here. The meeting is open to the public for comment for items that are on the agenda. Hearing none, say good evening, board. Mr.
Good
Featherman,
evening.
Ms. Tavernier. Do we have any committee reports tonight?
I have one. I have one.
Okay, so who would like to go first? I have one too, so I'll go last.
Okay.
We'll go down
Okay, that's fine. Do either of you have any?
I made a mistake.
So that'd be a no?
No.
Okay. All right. I'll start off. We had a finance meeting this past week, and we were taking another look at the budget, and we were able to fine tune it a little bit, in which we were able to recognize some savings, and so we're reducing, as of right now, we're proposing that we reduce the amount of the bank cap. Originally, it was going to be a little over 300,000. We're proposing about 124 because we're planning on using some extraordinary aid in the budget. So that brings down the percentage increase to 2.51%. And so just from perspective, that's going to be a property tax increase for average assessed household of about 145.85. And last year's amount was 132.55. And that's about $13.30 more per year. And if you want to get down to it, that's $1.11 more a month. So, and again, nothing's final, we were taking a look at it, and that's the updated numbers. But the final presentation for the entire budget will be on April 29th, or 28th, I'm sorry. 28th, right? Okay, 28th.
There was also some savings in dental insurance as well that was able to reduce.
There was a
that
small
number.
savings,
Right,
exactly,
so
about
that-
$35,000.
Right, so we like to thank our business administrator for making that happen.
Absolutely.
North End had their FSA meeting. Tomorrow night, they have an Alex and Annie event at the store in Ridgewood, and the portion of the proceeds go directly to the North End FSA. You can also call the store and order the items if you can't get there. And the event is from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m., if anybody's interested. And North End is also having their dinner dance next Thursday, April 2nd. So that the form is in the Friday folder if anybody's interested in attending that. And that's all I've got.
Thank you. And I attended the South End FSA meeting. Our fourth grade teachers, some of whom were here tonight, were there, and they spoke about all the good things that are going on in fourth grade. But the one thing I wanted to mention was that Mrs. DiMatteo had a little presentation, a little slideshow. Thank you to the FSA for everything that they do. And she showed photographs of the pep rallies that the kindergartners and the first graders had for the third and the fourth graders. I guess kindergarten, first, and second graders had for the third and the fourth graders before the park test. And it was just amazing, and they really did a great job, rock the vote and all that stuff. And I was always thinking that, we hear all the negative issues on park, that I wish this was publicized, because it really, it looked like it was an amazing event, and the little ones really got into it. And I guess the older ones didn't know what was going on. They thought they were in trouble. Mrs. DiMatteo brought them all down to the gym, and there was this big pep rally and surprise for them. So, great job to everyone in South End for that, and, making our third and fourth graders comfortable before the test. Anything else?
Did the Scott Chesney thing, did that happen in the last 2 weeks?
Yes.
It did, sorry. I just thought about that. Just a little update. Mr. Scala and I were able to go watch Mr. Chesney did a presentation at the middle school. It was for the entire student body. And I have to say, the fact that they all sat there quiet for over an hour and listened to this man speak was just amazing. When I saw everybody in the gym, I didn't think at all that he'd be able to hold their attention for an hour, and he really did. And he came in and he spoke about his disability and kind of how it happened, and the Christopher Reeves Foundation, and just talked about like living life and not judging people, and it was just amazing. I mean, there were so many kids who stood up afterwards and wanted to go and talk to him and tell their story, and it was very inspirational, and I think everybody really enjoyed it. So.
Yeah, it was great.
And thanks to him again for doing that. That was amazing.
And thanks to you, because you were instrumental in.
Oh, he
bringing
called
them,
me, so I'm happy to have passed on the message. So.
Okay, any other committee reports? All righty, we're going to move on to our board presentations. Tonight, we have our district architect, Mr. Robert Donahue. He's here to talk to us a little bit about a proposed boiler project that is pending over at the high school. So welcome, Mr. Donahue.
Help, Jim. Sorry. I think I broke it. Thank you for having us here tonight. We've prepared a presentation. I'm actually going to have my consulting engineer present and talk about the boiler room in the high school. Thank you. Forward back, okay. I understand there were some questions about the boiler room, and this is a little presentation about what's going on down there now. So if I could introduce Mr. Jim Sarno from KSI Engineers. If you have any questions, you can ask during or after, or both.
Okay. I think I'm loud enough, so. Oh.
You need to go on the microphone for the camera.
You can hold it. You can
Okay. What we're talking about is the older boiler room over at the high school. Downstairs, we changed out the boilers back in 2008. At that time, boiler number 2 was left in place as a backup boiler. We put 2 new Airco boilers in. Since 2009, there was a failure in one of the flooring radiant heat loops. What we did is we worked around it. We found a different way to provide heat to those areas up in the E-wing, the right-hand side. So we took care of that. And the conditions of the piping, specifically in the boiler room, are such that pipes are starting to leak, corrosion's taken place, and they have not improved. They're about where they are. And there's been multiple piping changes over the years. The boiler room is from probably, I believe it's around the 60s. The school has grown a lot since then. So what's happened is the pieces have been taken out, pieces have been added. It's been kind of like hodgepodged a little bit, as you'll see in some of the pictures. Some of the shutoff valves are starting to get stuck. They need to get changed in the majority of the room. The pneumatic controls in the boiler room, they're old, they're aged, they need some upgrades. And again, the corrosion is starting to have a negative impact on the system. I'm assuming most of you don't get down into the boiler room, but this is when you come down the stairs, you've hit the first landing. That's the one set of boiler. Those are the new boilers right there.
Wait, could you go back to that point where the boilers are?
That's what I was just trying to find. Is there a pointer on here?
Yeah, top is going to be a pointer on it.
There we go. That's the older boiler right there. These are the new boilers here. I'll get you a picture of those in a second. This is the pumps. There's 4 pumps along this wall. This is what distributes the hot water through the building. That's the air compressor. That's the pneumatic controls for the other half of the E-wing and the boiler room. And these right here, these are the new boilers that you guys got back in 2008. These are efficient enough and they're producing enough capacity that you don't have to run that other boiler. This is the boiler we're looking to take out. Here's a front shot with the burner. What happens, the breaching or the flue comes off the top, runs across, and then it goes into the chimney, which is right here. and also goes into the chimney as one of the domestic water heaters that you have over in the high school. Here's some pictures of some of the pumps that are there. As you can see, we've got we need some fixes. These are some of the other pumps on that wall we saw before. You can see we've got some corrosion going on the outside of the piping and the valves. These are the electrical panels. Some of these are from the 60s when they were put in. Some were put in newer, previous to 2008. You've got a lot of old fuse circuit breakers. I'm sorry, a lot of fuses in here. A lot of what we use now is we use circuit breakers. Again, this is the lineup. These are for the various pumps that are on the wall. This is where the old main electric came in. That's the original fuse disconnect. Again, these are just some of the other panels that are there.
Are those in use or not in use?
These are in use. Everything here is active. Correct.
The only thing that we've seen so far that's not in use is the old boiler, correct?
Correct.
Can I ask a question about the old boiler? So
Sure.
You were here when that project was done,
That was
right?
ours, yes.
Right, so why was it determined to leave it in place?
Because we didn't have an active account of how much capacity you guys were actually using in the E-wing.
Okay.
So what we did is we put that in. We took out boiler number 1 was really bad. That one still had some quote-unquote life in it. So we left it there as a standby boiler. And over the years, we've checked with Mario. It really hasn't fired at all. Those two boilers are carrying the whole E-wing.
But there was a reason it was left in place. It
Yes.
wasn't like it was just left in place.
It was left
to
as a
save
backup
money.
in case we needed it, correct.
Okay, thank you.
I have a quick question too. If it's not in use, one of the things you said it needs some fixes. So what needs to be fixed on it if it's not being used?
Well, I'll get to that in a second, but we're actually looking to take that out. The old boiler?
Right.
We're looking to take it out.
Right, but one of the things you had said was there were valves that needed fixes.
Correct. If
So,
you take a look at some of these valves back here,
okay, but that's the old boiler.
no, these are the pumps.
That's connected to the new boiler.
You
Oh,
have,
that's the connected to the, okay,
right, there's,
okay.
in the boiler room, you have the old boiler, the 2 new boilers, these pumps, all the valving, all the piping, and the controls.
Connected to the new boiler.
Yeah, they're connected to all the boilers.
Oh,
There's a
I
common
understand now.
system between them.
I got it, okay. Oh, that's what we used on the new boiler.
This is one of the starters for one of the pumps on the sidewall. It's got some corrosion going on. And this is where you can see where you have some of the corrosion going on some of the piping. What we've also got, and you'll see some other pictures, if you've had some leak spring out through the wall where the wall's gotten a little thin, and these are some of the patches that were put in to control the leak. Some more corrosion going on. This is where part of the old radiant panel manifold used to be. That's been since removed except for one loop, which is no longer in use. Here's some of the old pieces of piping that came in, have been since removed. Here's another example of a patch that was put on. Here's another patch right here. There's another patch right there. And there's another patch right there. And here's one that's actually actively leaking right now. I believe that's awaiting a patch. You can see what happens. It starts corroding from the inside and it just starts working its way out. This is that radiant loop that went bad back in 2009. It's been since tagged, so they know which loop it is. This is the combustion air louver. It brings in combustion air for the old boiler. We're not going to be using it, so we're suggesting you modify this. You don't need it as much anymore. You can get rid of it. One of the other things you can do also is we have the control system that we put in for those 2 new boilers. That's the only smart control portion of the space. So you have this down in the boiler room, and when we did the last referendum, you have the Tracer SC panel upstairs. What we're proposing is you tie the 2 together so you can actually get better control over the boiler room. Don't put pneumatic controls back in if we clean it up. go with DDC controls or electronic controls, and bring it back to that tracer SC panel upstairs so you can get alarms, you can control it, you can turn it on and off. It gives you more control, more efficiency. So here's a summary of what we're looking for. We're looking to leave the 2 boilers in that are there and take out boiler number 2. Take it out in its entirety with its controls, its breaching, clean up the floor below it. By taking out boiler number 2, you no longer have to spend money to have it inspected. You no longer have to maintain the boiler on your boiler insurance policy. And lastly, you no longer have to maintain the boiler stack permit with the New Jersey DEP. Some other things we're suggesting is basically we remove all of the piping in the boiler room, clean it up, and just do it correctly to reflect what's actually going on now. A lot of what was there was started when it was back in the 60s. It just needs to get corrected and changed. Install new DDC controls for the pumps, new insulation, obviously to be efficient. Change out all those electric panels that you saw along that one sidewall, clean those up. Modifications on that louver that I was showing you to clean that up as well. An exhaust fan to ventilate the space in the summertime. Give you some new lights down there, a fresh coat of paint, and patch the floor where the old boiler was removed. The proposed timeline for this is, obviously the sooner the better, but March through May we would be going into a design phase, bid it in May, award in June, and then June through August when the project work would take place, and then complete near the end of September, so it would be ready and online for October 15th, which is typically the official heating day for the year. Any questions?
Could you just go back to the slide with the proposed?
This one?
Can I ask some questions? Okay. This is what I might not be getting and what I'm missing here. If we just decommissioned the boiler, that's in question of removing, why would we need to remove it? Why can't we just decommission it, shut it down? Would we still have to have inspections on a decommissioned boiler and save costs? Like, why would we have to spend the dollars to remove it?
I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe typically what happens, do we have to take care of that from an environmental standpoint, or are we good?
It's not underground.
No, I think what he's getting at is what's in the surrounding the chamber and the boiler.
In between the sections of the boiler,
We need to be abated.
they need an abatement. So you just don't want to leave it there and let things go bad.
But if we're not using it, my understanding, because again, this is the first time I'm hearing this presentation, so I might be missing things, so just help me here. Right now, I understand that it is still connected, the piping is still connected.
Actively
to
connected.
Right. So if we just decommission those pipes and act like that is just a fixture in a basement, not being used, why do we have to spend the dollars to abate it or remove it if we're not even using it?
Typically, you just don't leave something there that's not being used.
Why?
I think I can answer this question. I think the answer is you probably could.
Okay.
But I think what you might be missing is that that's not the bulk of the cost of the removal. There's asbestos elsewhere in the room on the piping. And I think the bulk of the cost of the project is the piping, not necessarily the removal of the boiler.
But that's what I was asking. I'm not seeing in the presentation of what we're actually doing besides removing the boiler.
Oh, it's
all new piping.
all new piping in the whole room.
Where was that? Did I miss it?
All this. All this. All this.
The removal of the boiler is a small component of the project. Overall, it's not making an impact in the project as opposed to all of the ripping out all the piping and redoing the piping, the electrical, and the controls.
Just out of curiosity, how come the piping wasn't done when the boilers were done 7, 8 years ago?
There wasn't enough money for it at the time.
Already.
What's happened is we've had multiple projects come through here since whenever it was built, and it's just been cut left, cut left, cut left, and it's starting to have an impact on the system with dirt, corrosion. It's just, you can see, it's just not an optimal design. You're starting to have negative issues. The other issue is you're starting to have leaks. The leaks are happening because your walls are getting a little thin, and you've got to keep patching them. See here, that's the typical corrosion. Basically what has to happen is keep the active mains that are still there, identify where they come through the wall, and then just redo it. Redo the arteries, redo the veins, if you will, of what's going on in there to reflect what really needs to be done.
And what is the condition of the electrical panels? Are you including the electrical just because you're basically gutting the whole place and putting everything new in, or do the electrical panels, are they in a condition that they can't be used anymore?
But one of the issues we noted, some of them are in semi-decent condition, some of them are in fair condition. They're all older. But if you notice one of the issues we have here, this is the floor. This is the conductors between this panel and the panels to the left. You can see it's got some dirt markings on it. Possibly from water is what we're thinking it's from. It's right on top of the floor. And if you take a look, see how it runs from the panel that's right here, runs right along the floor, and then it jumps back up.
And what's inside that? That just electrical wires?
Wires,
Is there a
conductors.
way to reroute that to to a different part?
That's what we would do.
Without removing all, I mean, is there a way to do it without putting all new panels in?
We'd have to look at it, but probably yes.
But if we're going to be putting new piping and everything, there wouldn't be water anymore.
No, some of that water is from the floor. Some of it is from piping leaks. There's a combination of two things going on there. You do have some leaks in the far corner, but you also have some groundwater that was coming up when we were there the other day.
Just seeping up.
Just seeping up from around the boiler. I think we had a picture. See right around here? It was coming up from around the concrete pad beneath the boiler that's there.
See, I think that we hear the concern about the issues, and obviously it looks like it's not in optimal condition, even far from optimal condition, and things may need to be done down there. But if there's something that can be done that's more cost effective, obviously we don't want to, nickel and dime a project when we're talking about safety, but putting everything together in terms of, keeping safety number one and figuring out if there's a way to reduce the cost of the project, that's something that we'd be interested in hearing,
Really, there is no, aside from decommissioning, cut off the flue, disconnect the valves, there's really nothing else you can do as a stopgap or a patch for the piping.
For example, the electrical panels, I don't know, we haven't seen the breakdown of the cost. We just saw a bulk number. So we haven't seen the breakdown, how much each part of the project is gonna cost. If there are pieces that we can continue to utilize that are not in bad condition, like the electrical panels, just by moving that pipe somewhere else, or maybe if it's not leaking, not even having to move it, and maybe decommissioning the boiler and not removing it. We really need to look at what the cost of the whole thing would be, and where we can kind of pick and choose what really needs to be done. Obviously the piping and the asbestos situation is something that in my mind at least, is something that we can't turn our backs on. But maybe there's something else down there that can help us, be a little more.
And just so the audience knows and the community knows, I don't know if you know a dollar amount that we're speaking of. Was that given at all? Okay, so the dollar amount is about $250,000. So that's why we're asking the questions that we're asking, because it's not cheap. And it would come out of our capital reserve, so it's not money that would be a burden on the community. It would come out of our capital reserve, but at the same time, we're looking at other projects throughout the district, so that's why we're asking the questions that we're asking, because it's not minimal. It's a sizable amount that we're talking about here. So, so this is the first time we're seeing the presentation, just like you guys. So that's why we're asking the questions that we have. So feel free from the audience, if you have questions, that we might not be asking, feel free to jump in.
Could I ask one real quick? One of the things that you said we'd be saving money on, if we remove it, is the inspections, the insurance, and a stack permit. I don't know exactly what that is, but what are those costs per year?
I'd have to check with, maybe we could check with Mario on that. I don't know how the dollar value is associated with each one.
And then again, if we decommissioned it and didn't remove it, would we still be responsible for those inspections and everything else like that?
Right, and we don't even know what that is, and we're saving it, but we don't know what, not off the top of your head, you'd have no idea what that is?
No, I don't.
Do we,
I can guess that it's fractional compared to the cost of the project. But again, I think the bigger issue is not the removal of the boiler, but the piping.
No, I think as Mr. Sakala said, we definitely have to move forward with, we have to fix what's there. I think we're just looking right now to really, again, in his words, just
I
really
understand.
fine tune this, and if there's ways that we can skin something off this, that's what we're trying to do.
And just get a breakdown
Yeah.
of how much is the asbestos removal, how much are the pipes, how much is the boiler removal versus what you're saying.
Well, I
said
believe,
it's
yeah,
minimal. What's minimal
I
mean?
believe we just got the asbestos numbers recently. I think maybe yesterday or today. Even.
Yeah, that was 26,000
Right.
for the asbestos.
Plus,
Right,
plus
so-
the monitoring for that. which-
10,000.
Right.
What's
So
a minimal amount though for removal of a boiler? For out of $250,000, like what would be minimal?
I honestly couldn't. Well, I could tell you actually because that $25,000 number includes the removal of the boiler and all the piping and all the asbestos.
The asbestos.
The asbestos abatement
includes the.
Yes, it does, and we did that for a reason. We had done that when
just.
Oh, okay, okay.
we had done that when we did the boilers in this school as well, and we did it at South End. We have found that it's more cost effective to have the asbestos abatement contractor remove the boilers and the piping rather than have them just remove the asbestos, because when they remove the asbestos out of the boiler, they have to basically dissect it. This way, they can dissect it in the room, take all the pieces with them, and then we don't have to have a separate demolition contractor come in associated with the contractor who does the work. So we believe that you get a savings from that because that $25,000 includes that.
Great. Okay, good. Joe, I think we might have some
Oh,
questions.
sorry, sure.
Is the current piping copper piping? What is the current pipe?
No, it's not. It's mostly black iron. There's some galvanized down there, and it's got a lot of wear and tear and years on it.
I think that if we can kind of see a breakdown of how the project is going to, the dollar amounts for the different portions of the project, the electrical, we know what now we know what the boiler's gonna cost, but, but if there's a way to put that into some kind of form, Mr. Donahue, where we can look at it and we can, know
Right.
what each
Well,
portion costs.
We can try to do that. I mean, it's rough at this stage without having a design, but we can try to dissect the overall number
Yeah, I mean,
and see
even
if
if you
it
can give us a general overview and I also would like to know if there's something down there, like the electrical panels that aren't in terrible condition, that still are working, and they don't need to be removed, but for the fact that we're kind of doing a big project, and what that would save if we didn't remove them.
Right. I think we'd also have to weigh that against what would it cost to keep them in terms of what kind of workaround we'd have to do to work with the old panels. And I don't know the answer to that.
I'd have to check
We-
the electrical, but yeah.
Because there might be some issue with using the old panels that we'd have to overcome. So, right.
There's a lot of old wiring down there. There's a lot of the old, the fuses that are down there. And using that with some of the, if we were to do some new equipment, that might be an issue. We'd have to watch that.
You mean new equipment sometime later on down the road?
In other words, if a pump failed and it needed a new starter, you'd be wiring a new starter with new wiring back to a panel that's from 1960.
You mean to replace one of those two that are new?
No, not the boilers, the pumps. The pumps that are there, the 4 pumps that were on the wall. Like if one of those were to fail with its associated starter, the little thing that you push, right? In other words, like this is a newer pump that was put in, that was put in the space of an old one, but its starter, that's what you push to start it.
The new thing.
The new, yeah. So there's a mishmash. I don't want to say a smorgasbord, but there's a little bit of everything down there.
It's crazy.
But yeah, these are the pumps that I was talking about. I mean, there's 4 of them. One is a backup, but you basically have 3 of them down there operating, plus the one on the far wall. And our proposal included all new, changing it all out, all new pumps, all new controls, all new starters.
And what's the length of the project? I know you gave us a timeline in your proposal.
It would be, if we were to start fairly soon, we would be complete by September in time for the October heating season.
That's realistic for that scope of a project.
With a notice to proceed fairly shortly, yes. The issue is we're starting to get closer and closer to summer, and the closer we get, the more contractors get filled up, and it gets harder and harder to get guys out of the hall and find the labor that you need as well.
There is another issue with, as we get closer to the summer too, as Jim said, a lot of the contractors are booked up, so they're less competitive because they have jobs. So they're, it's bonus for them if they get another job.
So I have a question then, because I think, as we're hearing, I think time is of the essence, right?
It is, if you're planning on doing it this summer, it really is.
Okay, so I think that we have concerns. Is there a way, I guess this is a question for Renee, if we, because I know there's a motion that possibly we were going to vote on, and we were kind of hesitant as a board to vote on something tonight. Is there a way that if we vote it tonight to give the go-ahead to start a process without a dollar amount affixed to it until we hear that at the next board meeting? Can we at least start the process of, because we obviously know that we need to design, we know that we're going to do something here to fix it, probably a majority of this. We're just looking to find some savings along the way. But I think as a board, after seeing this, again, I might be speaking just out of turn here, but it's obvious that we have to do something.
Did we approve the design work with Mr. Donahue's firm?
We
For
haven't
this?
approved that yet. No.
We haven't approved
Do we
anything.
have that
Nothing.
separately, though?
We have a motion for you to do the design work. You'll submit
Would
the
that help
project to
if
the
we
DOA.
approve that tonight?
Yeah, so what I'm trying to do is keep the process going,
Yeah,
so
well,
that
is-
way we can,
Right, that is
you know,
that is the first part of the process. So if we had to go ahead on design, yes. I mean, we already have a project number. We had submitted first day project number. We have that now. So if we can start with the design, I can also get schematic submission down to the state and get approval on that. And then we're ahead of the game. But yes, if we had approval on design, we could move forward. I just don't want to promise a savings. I don't want to promise a savings that you want to see if I can't guarantee there's going to be some kind of a savings.
But it's something that we can at least look at.
We will look at it, but again, I can't promise that we could come up with a savings. We're dealing with basics here, and we're dealing with pipes and electrical panels and pumps. I mean,
What are your thoughts?
No, I agree. We should
I agree,
approve
we
the
should.
design work tonight. So that we
Absolutely.
can move forward, so we can be better educated for next month.
Yeah, and then we could look at the costs
We'll know those
associated.
costs by then, absolutely.
Just also for the public, and just so for your, because I know you're probably saying, wow, they're like really not, we're not pushing back in any way, and I hope that's not the way it is.
I understand.
It's that we
this-
were hit with
Right.
the bleachers, last month. That came out of nowhere, which is a hefty lump sum. Then it's this, it's just, coming off of, a lot of things that, it's good that we have the capital funds for it, but again, we just are trying, we just don't want to just spend because we have it, because you never know what's going to come later.
I
We're just
understand.
trying to
I
fine-tune
completely understand,
everything.
and I have no problem answering your questions and trying to find savings. I always try to work with you as well as I can.
Absolutely.
I just do not want to promise that I can find a savings in this project
No, that's
because
great.
because to me it looks like there's not.
Right. Okay.
Does anyone from the public have any further questions? Board have any further questions?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I've passed down a proposed motion. It's the top one, so we can, when we get to business, we can move forward. on that. Okay, moving along with our board presentations, we have the first two components to our budget presentations, and tonight, I guess we'll ask Mr. Kinney first to present on special services. Welcome, Mr. Kinney.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight we'll be talking about the special education budget proposed 2015-16 school year. I have the thing in my hand. I'm going to press it. So let's do a quick breakdown of the budget as it stands right now, proposed, anticipated. Instructional costs. All right. I'm giving you general headings as far as how they relate in the budget as it stands. What does that include? Obviously, you have teacher salaries, paraprofessional salaries, supplies, again, with a subtotal of $1.654 million, with an increase of $244,170. Again, I'll explain as we further go on the reasons for the increase. I just want to give you a brief overview of the different lines and their increase or decrease thereof. Out-of-district tuitions. So these are placements of students in private facilities due to their severity of their disabilities. You have a budget subtotal of 2.7 with an increase of 293 from the last budget period, okay? From the last budget time, the last time I was standing up in front of you, okay? Transportation. Obviously, if you have students going to different schools throughout the counties to their out-of-district placements, you have to provide transportation. You also have to provide transportation to your preschool disabled children and those students as well that their home school is North End, but they attend a program at South End and vice versa. So there, the transportation cost for those particular special education students is $603,000 with a decrease of $35,000. And I'll explain some variables along the way with transportation as it relates to Sussex Cooperative. Related and extraordinary services, what we're talking about here, again, includes services above the salary positions that we have. So additional OT, we contract a part-time physical therapist. We have an ABA therapist that comes in and does services. Teacher of the deaf. All right, those students that have auditory impairments as required by their IEP. We have a teacher of the deaf from the Summit Speech School, comes in and does some great service with them. We have nursing services required for some students, prompt speech, feeding therapy, and now the addition of job coaching. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. Budget subtotal, $1.068 million with an increase of $78,000. Child study team is another line in the budget. Where are the funds allocated for that? Includes salaries, supplies, evaluation materials, and also the addition of a new IEP program, IEP Direct. About 35–40% of the state of New Jersey, the IEP programs are now moving to IEP Direct. And there are many, many, many benefits to using this program. Just off the top of my head, it syncs up to Genesis. It talks to Genesis every night. So as soon as you would put in something into this IEP program, such as a change of an IEP date or a change in placement or a related service, Genesis then talks to this IEP Direct and it coordinates, and you basically don't have to do double input as to right now what the child study team does. It also looks at what's in the child's IEP, syncs over what is now known as the personal needs plan, which relates to the park accommodations. It also syncs up and helps out Mr. Walsh in his NJ Smart reports, because those two databases have to talk to each other, because you have to submit a special education NJ Smart report along with a general NJ Smart report, and if they don't sync up, there are errors and we can't collectively submit reports that are required by the state. So the budget subtotal for child study team with salary, supplies, and the new IEP program, 429, with an increase of 18,000. Reasons for the increases. Instructional costs, you have salary increases. Transition away from academic support in certain areas. All right, next year in 5th grade, we'll be looking to utilize a double block of math for special education students. And the reason being is that academic support for some students was not allowing the kids with the most need for math instruction to get some of the math instruction or the math remediation, such as a Math Plus course, that the general ed kids. Think about that. The kids that need the most academic support in math, per se, are not availed that opportunity fully because of their other need. Now that we have Resource Center, replacement, and inclusion, full inclusion at the middle school and the 5th grade level, we're allowed or afforded that luxury to offer that. Additional staff with IEPs right now, and I'll give some figures later on as far as where we are and how, non-static this budget is because of the IEP process and how it develops. But right now, anticipated is additional staff of 1 inclusion teacher at South End, giving them a full inclusion battery. 1 LLD grade 4 teacher for certain students that require it within their IEP. And 1 special education teacher at the middle school. Right now, with the schedule being tweaked as far as how I cannot say, what that person will be, whether it's an inclusion, whether it's replacement, but the amount of periods designated to what we're going to need relates to 1 full-time special education teacher. Added district tuition. There were 4 students that moved into our district that already came and required, because of the severity of their disabilities, an out-of-district placement since July 2014. Also, there were 3 newly enrolled, there were 3 students that came into our district that were newly enrolled. There were 4 students that moved to out-of-district placements because of transition. They could not handle the transition to the next school. So therefore, they needed an alternative placement there. Related and extraordinary services. You have a group of seniors moving out. You have more preschool disabled kids coming into the program that require more services. So you're going to require more hands on deck, more OT, more PT, more ABA. So you're going to have those increase in services. Child study team. Salary increases, the new IEP program, again, coordinating and syncing up with Genesis. So very important. What will be achieved? We're going to enhance services for the neediest population. All right? We're going to add support for them, not only with teachers, but added services, the job coaching, the life skills program up at the high school. We're going to have job coaching for them. They'll be taking trips out into the workforce, getting workforce experience for them. It's part of their transitioning into adult life. Consistent programming between the elementary schools, full inclusion at South End, the opportunities for both schools to have the same availability of services. More accurate data and record keeping via IEP Direct. And I want to talk about continuum of programming. You have your continuum where you have, on one hand, a special education student who's in a general ed class with accommodations on one spectrum, one end of the spectrum. On the other end, you have a residential placement where a student would spend both his educational and his leisure time in a residential placement. Those are your two sides of the spectrum. In between, you want to be able to offer as much as you can as far as from year to year what your students are going to need, that continuum. And I say non-static because right now, as it stands, we're in the 60% range of IEPs still being annually reviewed every year. So there could be certain changes that go on that a child study team collectively determines for a student's program. And therefore, you know, the numbers that we look at now could fluctuate a little bit. There are many kids going through INRS, and we're becoming diligent about this. You know, we're identifying the kids at a younger age that need assistance, and it's going to pay off dividends for them in the long run later on. So yes, there are more kids that we're identifying that need more services, but in the long run, they're going to benefit. So the overall budget for special education anticipated, projected, there you have the subtotals, $6.4 million, give or take. Take questions.
Just a quick question. When you just said 60% are in, you know, of our IEPs are in flux, is that a norm?
Well, right now, I mean, you consider this like the special ed annual review season, per se, because most of the way, you know, both parents and case managers, in the springtime, they like to see how did the kid progress from September to sometime in April, May. Some out-of-district cases, you know, you could have those throughout the year because most likely the placements aren't going to change. But for some of the students in, say, inclusion or replacement, it could be that, you know, you don't want to look at the kid and have his annual review in October. You want to have it in May because he now has the whole year, and you could come in May and say, all right, let's look at the progress. You know, collectively, we could decide whether or not we give him a chance to go up into an inclusion classroom or keep him back down in a replacement. So that's where that non-static fluctuation could happen. You know, right now, the anticipation of a full special education middle school teacher is based off of, you know, what's anticipated. It could be that, you know, we have this amount slated for inclusion, but the IEPs, you know, they came out this way, and we may need another inclusion section. I joked with the best time for me to do my budget in reality, and any director of special services would say this, is June, the end of the school year, because you have a finality of all the programs of what the students need. But in this case, and obviously we have to put our budget, it's our, you know, best judgment here.
Great.
Thank you, Mr. Kinney. Okay, moving on. We have Mr. Walsh here with our technology budget presentation. Welcome, Mr. Walsh.
Okay, tonight we're going to give you an overview of our 2015-2016 budget for technology. On our general education computers, we broke this down between hardware services and ancillary hardware. So the plan is right now to increase one more Chromebook cart for each building. And then on our workstations, we normally rotate out workstations on a 5-year schedule, so about a fifth of our workstations rotate out every year. So that includes the Chromebooks. We brought in a bunch of them this year. Each building got a couple carts of Chromebooks, and if you talk to the teachers and principals, they loved them. And because the one thing we're missing in this district is space and rooms to put labs in. We can't build labs. The Chromebooks, the batteries last about 9 hours. They boot up in 15 seconds. A few years back, we put in a fairly robust wireless, which we're going to increase this coming year, and the Chromebooks have been a big hit, and the principals and teachers are asking for as many more as I can get. District-wide, it's time for us to replace our Genesis server. We've had the same server, even though we virtualized many of our servers, and the last time I think I came before you folks, I talked about our virtualization project where we were virtualized most of our district servers. The Genesis server, while you can do that, the costs are astronomical on the database side. The way Oracle, which is the database that Genesis runs with, if you put it on a virtual server, you have to buy as many licenses as processors in your whole virtual stack, even though when you build a virtual server, you may say it only has one processor. The way Oracle licensing works, we would have to be buying like 12 licenses instead of 2. So that's a hard metal box of its own. It is time to add one more VMware server into our stack. The servers that are there are 4 years old now. They're running fine, but they're just getting a little to that point where you'd be worried about them. So we'll bring in another VMware server, make it part of the stack, and then just distribute our virtual servers. Our virtual server or VM server stack is really a combination of multiple servers with some very large redundant drive arrays. And then you create these virtual machines inside of that. So we're going to be adding one more virtual server to the stack, and then at some point we'll be retiring one of the older servers out of it. Software licenses and services. In our media centers, we have some database and reference software that we buy district-wide. We are required to have a CPR-compliant filter, and then we use a piece of software called Trouble Tracker, and our Google Apps for Education, our backup. Green Shutdown is a service I think I talked about the last time I was here. We had just started using it. That saves us about $15,000 in the electricity a year. It shuts all our machines off every night at a pre-planned time, which works out really well, except for when somebody plans a nightly thing and I have them shutting off at 7 and in the middle of the presentation they go off. But so we vary it. We can change it in time, but it shuts all workstations in the district down at night. The student sync software is actually from the same people. It's really nice when a student is added into Genesis, a brand new student enrolls in Genesis, or if something changes with their name, the mom and dad, or mom got remarried, the student's name changed, it recreates the student in Genesis that evening, puts them in the right area within Genesis, puts them into our network. That's a service we use from the same company. Antivirus licenses, we still have to buy them. We have to buy them every year. You may have heard of a school in New Jersey today that's in quite a lot of trouble over probably not having good antivirus, but their whole district is shut down right now down in Swedesboro, and it's been shut down since, I guess, last Friday. VM routing support, that's just a service we buy to help us with our VM routing. AppAssure is a software that we use to back up all our virtual timestamps, and they back up off-site to another drive array in a different building. And then we have a fee for the equipment that we use to run School Channel 76 per year. Our wireless. A couple years ago, we put in a fairly robust wireless plan. I mean, we were lucky enough, we fibered all our buildings together. Then we put in district-wide wireless. And at that point, we put wireless access points in the hallways, and we bleed into the classroom for wireless. Now that we're using more and more wireless devices, we are planning on upgrading the amount of antennas or access points, and so the classrooms will have an access point in each, or our goal is to get to each classroom having the access point in the classroom, so that as we're using either our wireless notebooks or our Chromebooks, or our bring your own device from home, the signal is strongest in each classroom. While our signals are very good right now, we use quite a lot of our wireless devices through Park. We give out over 1,500 IP addresses daily in our wireless system, counting our own equipment and bring your own devices. But we feel it's time to bring access points into the classroom. So we're scheduling to buy in another 50 access points and wire runs needed to do that, so that inside each room there'll be the wireless access point or antenna. And then we have general hardware, software expenses. When we did our fiber upgrade in the district, it changed how we did routing between our buildings. It's time to upgrade some of our Cisco switches that do all our routing, our border switches. Some of them have reached end of life, others are very close to end of life. And you don't want them going down, because if that goes down, the whole building is cut off from all the other services we supply. Typically, we buy printers as they go bad, and it's not beneficial anymore to repair them. Laser toner, we've cut that number down over the years. I remember about 8 years ago, we used to spend about $27,000 a year in toner, and we've constantly pushed the people to do more and more digitally and let teachers grade assignments in folders and looking at the assignments. Smartboard and projectors, smartboard projector repair. That's a number that I have in the budget. I don't know, that's as Chris used, a non-static number, perhaps. We have quite a lot of smartboards that have reached 5 years of age, which is a long time in the smartboard world. When a smartboard goes, it's anywhere from about $1,500 to, if we have to replace the whole thing, about $4,000. I know the schools have budgeted some in their budgets. We have some in ours, because what we find is that if it's a projector that's gone and a smartboard arm, we can send it out for repair, but it ranges about $400 to $500 to repair a smartboard projector. And then sometimes it's just easier to buy new projectors, or in some rooms that don't have smartboards, we've been putting, because teachers still wanted to be able to project onto whiteboards, we've been putting in projectors in those rooms. And then the last line, unanticipated is probably not the correct word there. Where there's always some hardware, software that we have in the district that we don't know when it's going to break. We probably have, off the top of my head, 12 to 13 UPSs, or uninterruptible power supplies, in the buildings. The batteries for those, when they do go, run about $400 for the battery change out. There's no way, we know how old they are, but there's no way of telling when the battery, it's like your car battery, when it goes, it goes. So things like that. Some rooms have smaller switches, could be video cards or something that's not covered under a warranty. So we always keep some money in a bucket for those items. So if you look at the totals by category, on our general ed computers, which is our smart books and our Dell computers, $86,000. The servers, $34,000. Software licenses and services, $25,900. Upgrade or expansion of our wireless would be $38,500. And general hardware, software, $73,000. And the proposed budget right now is at $257,400.
Is this plus or minus last year?
It's flat with last year, correct?
Flat?
Yes. Any other questions?
Yeah, the toner number looked, so the toners was 18,000. Did you ever look into the copier printers?
Yes.
And so what was that?
We have to buy toner for something.
Right, it just seems that they're much more efficient than the little printers.
Oh, we don't use any little printers. That's how we got the number way down. We only use larger network printers. None of the rooms, well, I can't say none. Some teachers we've allowed them to bring some of their own printers in that we don't buy toner for. But we have larger printers in the media centers and the offices and some of the faculty rooms, and that's what they print to. They're large network printers to handle larger workloads, where when I first came into the district, I think we had a little 3-in-1 printers almost in every classroom, and it was driving us crazy with toner. While it was maybe convenient, it was very costly. So I think each media center right now keeps one color and one black and white printer. At the middle school, I think we keep, in some of the labs, we keep a black and white printer, and in the main office. And so we've gotten away from the smaller, what you'd call your personal desktop printer, to larger.
Right. The next step up is like the color printers, and they're also copiers. So it's a color copier and printer. So that moving.
We do in some of the buildings. We do. Usually, where our copy machines are inside the main office somewhere, or like at the middle school, it's in the main office, past the front desks, down the hallway. While the staff can print to that, we don't want kids walking through the offices in all the buildings. So we are set up to print to the larger printers, but that's mainly for staff. Students print to the media center printers for the most part. Anything else?
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr.
Okay,
Walsh.
Thank you.
Okay, that concludes our budget presentations for this evening. At our next meeting, we'll have 2 more presentations, right? Okay, very good. Look forward to that. So we're going to move on the agenda now. From the Office of the Business Administrator and Board Secretary, under minutes, may I have a motion for B1 through B3. B1 is a motion to approve the public and executive minutes of March 10th, 2015. B2 is a motion to approve the budgetary transfers for the month of March 2015. And B3 is a motion to approve the treasurer's report for the month of February 2015. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Dye?
Yes.
Mrs. Marinelli?
Aye.
Mr. Mandela?
Aye.
And Mr. Sakala?
Yes. Under bills, may I have a motion for B4, which is a motion to pay a list of bills that were provided to us in our packet? May I have a
So-
motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Dye?
Yes.
Mrs. Marinelli?
Aye.
Mr. Mandela?
Aye.
And Mr. Sakala?
Yes. And Mrs. Tavier, I'll make the motion from Mr. Donnie, make that B15?
Yes.
Okay, we'll make that motion B15. So I'm going to call the motions under business B5 through B15. B5 is a motion to approve the board secretary certification to the Board of Education pursuant to the administrative code that no line item has encumbrances and expenditures which exceed the line item appropriation in violation of the code. B6 is a motion to approve the Substitute Service LLC as the district's substitute placement service for the 2015-2016 school year. B7 is a motion to approve Strauss Esme Associates as the school policy and regulations consultants for the 2015-2016 school year. B8 is a motion to approve the Cedar Grove District's participation in the Ed Data Service for purchasing supplies, goods, and services for the 2015-2016 school year. B9 is a motion to approve the Cedar Grove School District's participation in the Middlesex Regional Education Services Commission for the purchasing of supplies, goods, and services for the 2015-2016 school year. B10 is a motion to approve the Four Pillars Group application to use the Memorial Middle School Media Center on Wednesday evenings from April 15th, 2015 through July 1st, 2015 to hold their weekly class, waiving all associated fees. B11 is a motion to accept the generous donation from the Junior Women's Club of Cedar Grove in the amount of $500 for future locker refurbishment at Cedar Grove High School. B12 is a motion to retroactively approve Uncorked Productions' application to use Cedar Grove High School cafeteria hallway and surrounding classrooms on Wednesday, March 18th for a commercial production. And they would be paying, or they paid the necessary insurance and use of facilities, and $3,000 for those facilities. B13 is a motion to accept the donation of $500 from the Junior Women's Club of Cedar Grove to purchase a new projector screen and stand for staff and presentations at the Memorial Middle School. B14 is a motion, be it resolved, the Board of Education rescinds our contract or the contract with Lindaberry, McCormick, Estabrook, and Cooper effective March 31st, 2015, and enters into a contract with Scarillo, Cornell, Merlino, McKeever, and Osborne, LLC. This is for our legal team. This is our board attorney. And B15 is our walk-in motion that the board has in front of them. Motion to retroactively approve Robert Donahue, District Architect, to provide architectural/engineering services for the design and subsequent submittal of the project paperwork to the New Jersey State Department of Education, under that project number, for the removal of one existing obsolete boiler, removal of existing damaged and obsolete piping, pumps, and controls, and installation of new piping, pumps, and controls at Cedar Grove High School. The fee for said services will not exceed $26,000. May I have a motion for those items, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
I just have a question, just on B12. I know that a few times throughout the year, we have, where they do commercials or use whatever. I'm just asking, where does this money go to when we get this kind of?
It's a great question. I'm glad you asked.
You could tell I'm checking the checkbook now, right? That I'm very financially.
Full disclosure here, folks. We have nothing to hide, nothing up our sleeves here. Actually, we put the money to excellent use. In fact, just a couple of weeks ago, Mrs. Marinelli had suggested that we consider the After the Fire program that we had our seniors invited down to the auditorium at the high school to watch. Programs like that are quite expensive. And this $3,000 specifically, I'm sort of telling a secret here. Mr. Mangili is working on getting a very famous speaker to talk to our juniors and seniors
He's
about prom
whispering.
safety.
I know.
Am I whispering in that? Are you recording that? So we're bringing in, we use it for guest speakers, things that you really don't budget for. So we're bringing in a speaker to talk to our students about drinking and driving and making good decisions just before the prom.
Awesome.
But that's a secret, don't tell anyone.
No, that's great. Good deal. Thank you.
And the cost of that is actually $3,000.
No, I know some of these, but that's great. Thank you.
The only comment I have on B14, just so the public is aware, we're not changing board attorneys. Our board attorney is leaving his current firm and taking the education department with him to a new firm, which he is the lead partner in. So Mr. Scarillo will continue to be our board attorney. It's just going to be under a different heading, which would be his own law firm now, Scarillo, Cornell, Merlino, McKeever, and Osborne. So congratulations to Mr. Scarillo, and we look forward to continuing our work with him. He's been great, and we hope that continues. I'm sure it will. Any other comments? May I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Dye?
Yes.
Mr. Mandela?
Aye.
Mrs. Marinelli?
Aye.
And Mr. Sakala?
Yes. Mr. Featherman, we have a superintendent's report this evening?
Do.
Your dissertation. My God.
Well,
like a
you
little
can thank
mini
the audience
thesis
for
here.
this dissertation. There's a lot of audience participation represented in this report. Thank you to those of you that submitted
Did you see this?
information. I'll just stick to some highlights. I would like to add, Mr. Mandela, regarding your inquiry about those funds that we raised. We also put a lot of those monies to the locker refurbishment project that Mr. Mangili has initiated. If you've been in the upper B wing at the high school, you've seen those lockers. They look fantastic. And certainly, again, if you've been at the high school, you'll see that there are lots of other hallways that need refurbishment. And it costs lots of money. Last year's project was about $13,000, and you just really can't budget for those kinds of things. So the funds that we do generate are for guest speakers and refurbishment projects. So we're chipping away at it. So if you have a copy of the superintendent's report, it is chock full of things. But the first Board of Ed goal, of course, let's remember that we did pass a referendum, right? So while we have these unanticipated projects, the bleacher project and the proposed boiler project, we still have working behind the scenes, getting our ducks in a row for the biggest project of all. So we're working with Robert Donahue to get contracts settled and ratified by attorneys so that we can start designing the plans for each of those phases and go out to bid and so forth. So we're hoping that late spring we begin the process of doing that. Things are going out to bid. We start having our countless meetings at night to establish a schedule, a game plan for the next 2.5 years worth of projects. So that's going on amongst all of what you've been hearing about the last few meetings. And, P.S., park testing is wrapping up. So what I'd like to do first and foremost is thank our teaching staff, the administrative team, our supervisors and principals in particular, Director of Special Services, Mr. Kinney, wow. I mean, all of the talk, all of the worry about how our kids would handle it, how we as a district, our technology, how it would hold up. You know, as I look out here and I see you each week doing your thing, we've made it through. The problem-based, the PBA, let's call it that. The first window is about closed now. We're finished at the high school. We've wrapped up at North End. South End is doing some makeup tests, and the middle school will be done next week. So we've gotten through it by and large, folks, and it's a thanks to you all. So I thank you for that. As you read through the report, you'll see that Mr. Pearson and Mrs. Barbosa have been incredibly instrumental in working with your principals and yourself to see the park testing through. So kudos to them as well. As you go through, you'll see what we've been doing in terms of curriculum assessment and evaluation. You know, it's that time of year where we're into the third round of evaluation. All of you now are seeing your supervisors and your principals finalizing your observations in My Learning Plan. So by now you're getting your professional development logs together. Your doc logs are probably now chock full of good things. So we're phasing now into summative evaluation land. So keep up the good work. I'm looking forward to seeing you all out there in the classroom. And from that point, it really talks about what's going on in each of our schools. So I am not going to go through that because there are pages worth of incredibly interesting information that all of you are making happen. So I thank you for that. Please read these reports. They'll be posted online. Thanks for doing what you do. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Featherman. Moving on the agenda, may I have under personnel, under, let's see, from S1 to S8, may I have a motion for S1, a motion to approve the superintendent's report. S2, a motion to approve the revised school calendar for the 2015-2016 school year. S3 is a motion to approve Marie Lasher, retroactive to March 16th, 2015, South End LLD, grade 3 special ed teacher at the rate, salary prorated therein. S4 is a motion to approve Christy Torsha, MMS English teacher, for grade 5 at the salary as prorated and set forth in that item. S5 is a motion to approve the substitute teacher as set forth in that item for the 2014-2015 school year. S6 is a motion to authorize attendance at the events as listed for the fee or cost as listed therein. S7 is a motion to reimburse the school-based volunteer as set forth in that item. And S8 is a motion to approve the school-based volunteer as set forth in S8. May I have a motion for those items, please?
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? Mr. Featherman, you just want to just talk about the change to the school calendar briefly so the public is aware of that?
Absolutely. Upon final review of the district calendar, we realized that the middle school parent-teacher conferences were scheduled for Friday. And, well, we don't do those on Fridays. We do those on the night before, on Thursday. So that was the change. It's reflected in the new calendar. No worries. We've got you.
Thank you. May I have roll call, please?
Mrs. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Dye?
Yes.
Mrs. Marinelli?
Aye.
Mr. Mandela?
Aye.
And Mr. Sakala?
Yes. The meeting is now open to the public for comment for items either on or off the agenda. Seeing none, close that portion of the meeting. Our announcement for future meetings, our next meeting will not be on a Tuesday night, it will be on Wednesday night, April the 15th, here in the North End Media Center, 7 p.m. for executive session, 8 p.m. for the regular meeting. And our following meeting after that is we'll have our budget hearing, April 28th, 2015, here in the North End Media Center, 7 p.m. executive session, 8 p.m. regular meeting. Does the board have any final comments or thoughts? Everyone have a great spring break, and we'll see you on April the 15th. May I have roll call, please?
Mrs. Burke?
Yes.
We need a
Mrs.
motion
Dye?
to adjourn. We need a motion to
May I have a
adjourn.
motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Dye?
Yes.
Mrs. Marinelli?
Aye.
Mr. Mandela?
Aye.
And Mr. Sakala?
Yes, meeting is adjourned.
Yeah.